on your ride home.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. Hey, folks, I sat down for our Conduit for Action Scorecard Roundup earlier in the morning. Mr. Josh Waters joined us. It sounded like this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome back to the program. We've got Mr. Josh Waters, the second week in a row. He's from Political Strategies, and we're going to be going over Conduit for Action's Week 7 scorecard. This is up at conduitforaction.org. You can look for these posts pretty much every Monday, sometimes even Sunday evenings, I believe, Monday, somewhere around there. And if you'll go subscribe at conduitforaction.org on the right side of the page, put your email address in. You'll know exactly when it happens because you'll get an email update that things have changed. Josh, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
All right, so let's start at the top of the list here. Senate Bill 362, what does this bill do?
Yeah, Senate Bill 362 is a bill that would basically end the InvestArc tax credit program, which is a really complicated and convoluted tax credit that is provided for manufacturing, machinery repair parts, things like that, in which, after they spend the money, then they can come back and try to get a tax credit, these businesses. So it gets away with that program altogether. And what it does is it phases in a sales tax exemption on purchases for the repair parts. And when you hear exemption, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, that's a carve out. That's a special interest."
Which generally, I'm against carve outs. However, this is actually more of an issue of double taxation, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's not actually, an exemption or a carve out. What it is when they have to get a repair part or a machine part to, create a final product. That's currently, being taxed at that point. Then it's taxed at the, at the point of sale.
Yes,
so it's even further on with wholesale distributors, everything else. There's a possibility for what's called tax pyramiding, where a product is actually taxed 2 and 3 times before it actually gets to the consumer. And so this would
remind me to bring that up later in the interview when we talk about taxing things multiple times. Continue. I'm sorry.
No, that's I think I know what you're getting at. But the Tax Foundation, they put out a very broad tax reform strategy back right before the session started, and this was actually in their book that they put out. Was it would help Arkansas to basically get rid of this program and phase in this sales tax exemption. So I'm encouraged, especially with everything else going on this session. I think this is a very strong, a very good business-friendly policy.
So would this be a tax cut? Could you call this a tax cut?
I think you could. I think it's basically going to avoid the tax pyramiding. So I don't know if it's saying, hey.
So are these is there money being collected right now from this? What this is going to undo?
There is, and so I guess in that sense you could call it a tax cut, because the way it is now, though, it's a tax credit system, and so they go through the process and then they mail everything into the state and say, hey, this is what we spent on these repair parts, and then
so
they
give us a
something
tax
back.
credit. Okay.
And so, but this would be much easier, much simpler, and it would be broader based. So any of these repair parts, machinery parts.
The reason I asked that specifically is because it seems to me here in Arkansas, anytime we do try to lower the taxes on anywhere, we've got to raise them somewhere else. I talked to Brian King earlier today, and he was basically saying, look, our budget is in a lot worse shape, and that's why we keep raising all these taxes down here, because we really do need the money. And so I wonder, does SB 362, again, repeals the InvestArc, phases in a sales tax exemption on purchases for manufacturing equipment and repair parts, because eventually they're taxed at the point of sale, final consumption, rather. Is that going to get support from the governor if it takes money away from the state? I guess is my question. That's why I'm trying to gauge here.
I don't know if the governor has weighed in on this. I can tell you that it passed the Senate with 33 out of 35 votes. So if he does oppose it, it's going to be an uphill battle, because it seems like the Senate's fully on board. Now it's going to the House. So
okay.
I think it's a smart program. Most people will
and your
agree
sponsors
on.
here, Senator Lance Eads, from Senate District 7, and State Representative Andy Davis. He's a Republican, House District 31. And with that kind of overwhelming support, you would assume that the governor does think this is a good idea. But it's good that it's good that this is getting some support. Sounds like a good idea to me. All right, moving down next on the list over at conduitforaction.org, SB 425. That has the word support next to it. Josh, tell us what this is.
Yeah, that's a bill by Senator Terry Rice, and I don't know, a lot of specifics about it. It's a pretty short bill, just a one-page bill. But basically, the way it was presented yesterday on the Senate floor, Senator Rice was basically wanting the Board of Finance to kind of have some oversight on the various investments that the Treasurer's Office is involved in. And so that's what that bill would do. It did fail in the Senate yesterday, but I think there's some people maybe willing to work with him trying to get some kinks worked out. But it did fail on the Senate floor yesterday.
I understand Senator Jeremy Hutchinson claimed that this was unconstitutional, which is interesting. I wonder if he voted for Jake Files' Senate Bill 140, which actually is unconstitutional. The internet sales tax on out-of-state sellers. All right, I want to come back to what I said earlier about double taxation, and I'm sure this is going to make the scorecard in the coming week. Dan Douglas filed a bill that would apply the state sales tax of 6.5% on wholesale gasoline purchases, which would mean the government is trying to dip into the pocketbooks of Arkansans. Twice, essentially. 6.5% at the wholesale, and then we still have the state excise tax on gasoline per gallon to pay. I can't imagine Conduit for Action is going to be supporting this bill, and I don't have the number in front of me. You'll have to forgive me. I'm pulling a Kelly link. I don't have the bill number. I'm sorry. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I actually don't have the bill number in front of me either. But
wow, we're both pulling a Kelly link.
But that is a bill, as you can probably tell, the Week 7 scorecard was pretty short last week. There wasn't a lot of big issues filed. But with Monday being the last day to file bills, this week has seen a flurry of very big, bills with big impact, and that's one of them with Representative Douglas' bill. So I can pretty much guarantee that's going to be on the scorecard.
Yeah, I can pretty much guarantee you Dan Douglas is going to have a primary opponent. That's what I can guarantee. Republican with this many taxes. I want to remind you folks that Conduit for Action, they have their weekly scorecards, but then they also keep a running tally. So every week, even if they do have a short scorecard like they do this week, that features new legislation that they support or oppose. Then at the bottom, they have the year-to-date scorecard and all the bills in numerical order that they have scored, whether they oppose it, whether they support it, and you have the bill number there. And so certainly check that out. It's conduitforaction.org. And the purpose of this, down at the bottom, that CFA promotes the reduction in the size and scope of Arkansas state government with the belief such reduction would proportionately increase individual freedom and liberties and economic prosperity for all Arkansans. During the 91st General Assembly regular legislative session, CFA will issue weekly list of relevant bills filed by the legislature. CFA will take a position on those bills and either support or oppose them using the CFA Economic Freedom Filter. The filter looks at whether a piece of legislation promotes more freedom or less freedom by considering 1. If it grows or shrinks government, 2. Increases or decreases dependency on government, and or 3. Spends money the state doesn't have. This is very good stuff, and so that's the mindset. It's the mindset of, I think, most people that claim to be conservatives, this is their mindset. Some in the Republican establishment, not so much. So Josh, it looks like if we're getting close to that filing deadline, which is Monday, correct? Then we're going to be able to pretty much project when this is all going to be over. I would imagine, because you're going to have a certain number of bills, and we'll be able to at least estimate, when this is all going to be over down here, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. It'll give a pretty good picture of, the more controversial bills will take more time. If there's not as many of those, might not be here as long. So probably, I think probably same schedule as maybe last session, a few days out early, but you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
It seems one thing that I have noticed and you've talked about is even when a bill fails, it just seems to keep coming back until they have enough votes. They'll change it a little bit to get a few votes here and a few votes there. So.
Yeah, we've had some confirmation. Again, I sat down with Brian King just a second ago, specifically on SB 140, the internet sales tax. It is a new tax. Matter of fact, let me go back here on Conduit Fractions website because I'm pretty sure, the latest article posted today, SB 140, internet sales tax violates the Republican Party platform. It's the Democrats in the House Rev and Tax Committee, though, that are holding this bill up, and they're doing so because they want an amendment that directs where the money is going. We now are hearing from Republicans that are saying the reason the Republican Party or the leadership, well, let's just say Asa Hutchinson, doesn't want an amendment specifically directing the new revenue from the internet sales tax where it would go is because he needs it to cover other budget shortfalls that we don't know about. I mean, that is now becoming a fast speculation about that we're in a lot more budget. I mean, I can quote anonymous senators, Democrat senators, when it comes to certain appropriation bills that say, look, we're passing this appropriation bill, but we're not going to, I mean, we're probably not going to have the money to fund this area of government. I think there's a lot of warning signs down here that we're in a fiscal mess, and that's why Republicans are violating their party platform by raising taxes. What's the status of SB 140 to you, Josh?
I think you nailed it. It's failed not because the makeup of the committee doesn't want it. They just want to direct where the money's going to go. And, as was covered last week, Representative Douglas and Senator Files, the sponsors, they think if we direct where it's going to go, it presents two issues. One, it'll fail on the House floor. And two, Senator Files mentioned he thinks it muddies the waters on a constitutional challenge because that would be a straight, we're taxing and, putting the money towards a specific program rather than what they're trying to do is create an economic nexus. And it's pretty crafty, but, time will tell if it's going to be upheld. But what they're trying to do is only create an economic nexus and not try to muddy the waters with it being just a straight new tax.
And we know it's for a challenge, for a court challenge. And the Supreme Court will decide if it's crafty or crappy. I couldn't resist. Josh Waters with Political Strategies. We